Good evening here from Empire's Comics Vault here in Sacramento, California. We are back for another creator interview, someone who you will all know already from the shop, and of course his works over at Vault Comics. We are here with David Andry of Resonant right now, and welcome to the show, sir. I think this is the first time we've actually had you on this kind of a video, isn't it?
Yes, I was getting in my car ready to drive down to the shop, uh, and Ronnie sent me a message. Like, here's the link to the StreamYard. I'm like, what the heck do I need StreamYard for? I'm going to go talk to Ben.
Nice. Yes, just a whole different world that we've adapted to. But thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Of course, you will know David from his Resonant work. He's been here with his Ghost Thunder many times for Free Comic Book Day, and we're here to learn more about what's happening with Resonant because there's a trade coming, and maybe some tidbits for some projects that David has in the works. So, how's your evening going, sir?
Good, good. Just a normal day at work, and excited to come on and chat with you. And any opportunity I have to come and self-promote, I will never miss that opportunity.
But there's the thing, Dylan, my God, you can't miss it though. I mean,
Yeah.
in an industry like this, especially in an industry where every single week there's plenty of new number ones hitting the shelf.
I mean, look behind you, Ben. Look at the variety that is on those shelves, and it's like, how do you like stand out in the crowd? How do you stick your hand up and just say, "Hey, please check me out"? I thought, maybe this was kind of like me being a little bit too confident, but I always thought, like, even with my self-published stuff, if people just give it a chance, they would like it. And that's all I ever wanted was someone like, hey, read this, just check it out, look at the first issue, flip through it, read 2 pages, read 3 pages, just give it a chance, and if you like it, then pick it up. There's so much out there, and there's honestly so much good stuff, but there's just the volume, and I think sometimes Marvel and DC just try to bury you with the sheer volume of like Batman books and X books, and there's not a lot of room for small guys to stick their heads up. So,
well, I mean, I imagine it's got to be somewhat similar at many comic shops, but here, there's a lot of customers who aren't even interested in the Marvel and DC, which is really nice for creators like you. And there's a lot of Marvel and DC fans who I've noticed over the years have gotten a little bit of a burnout. As much as I love Peter Parker, you clock every few years, and they're looking for something like the product that you brought to the table. And when you released it, we had you down here, which was great, talking to people, putting it in their hands, as you said, showing it to them, just give it a shot. Let's step back just a little bit then and introduce people to where you started. What got you going on comics, and what really made you want to be a creator?
Well, I started reading comics in the 80s. I'm nice and old now, so I can say I was a child of the 80s, and I was reading Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when it was on the stands. And that was what, like, before the cartoon and all the other stuff, when it was just a black and white indie book. Man, I saw that, and I didn't know comics like that existed. And so I was a fan from there. And then in my teenage years were the 90s. And so we had the Image explosion. And in that time, you had guys like Rob Liefeld, who was like, I think 17 years old, drawing comics professionally. And so it became kind of this thing that seemed a little attainable. And they would do talent searches. And I remember I sent in a couple of scripts for a Wildstorm talent search, and got very nice personalized rejection letters on both of them. So I was like, okay, someone actually read it, and they like had comments about it. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
So they actually gave you some feedback.
Yes, I have. I have them here somewhere in the office. I have my letters that I got in 1992 as rejection letters for the one of the Wildstorm talent hunts.
And that's great. that was one of the things that all of us wanted to do, and we didn't follow through. So the fact that you actually put those out there, and got the rejection letters, and the
Yeah.
rejection letters are just part of it.
Yep.
It's, it's something to take, and then, as you said, you kept it, and then use it as motivation to
Oh yeah.
get better and continue.
Yeah. And so like when I got into college and I stopped having money for comics, I stopped collecting comics for about 10 years, but I always was writing and just being creative. I took a lot of English classes. I accidentally became an English minor because I just had enough credits
Nice.
I actually had enough credits for the major,
Just
but
by default.
just by default, because it was like, okay, I got to take this math, I got to take this whatever, and I'm like, what's my fun class? Oh, I'll take an English class. I'll take a Norse mythology. I'll take a Shakespeare. I'll take a American Lit. And so that was like my fun classes were always my English classes. And so, kind of fell into like working, having a career, finishing my master's program, all this stuff, and all that kind of went away. And then when about 12 years ago, when The Walking Dead launched, my friend Sina Grace was the editor for Robert Kirkman for Walking Dead and for Invincible.
Yes,
And
we've had it on our
yeah,
show. Oh, that's great.
yeah. My buddy Sina, I knew him from a friend who lived in LA. My best bud Sean Kirkham, who has worked for Skybound since Skybound basically became a thing. We started volunteering together, and then after a year, Skybound hired him. And so once I got back into comics that way, I started collecting and reading. And I had to read all the Walking Dead because I couldn't sell them at the booth without knowing what was going on. And so I read all the Invincible and all everything. And that was really just rehooked me. What a great couple of comics to get rehooked on, When I was reading Invincible, I'm like, this is awesome. This is kind of like Spider-Man. And then there's the big twist, towards the beginning. And I'm like, this is nothing like Spider-Man.
Completely different.
Yeah. And so, I just really got hooked back to comics, started meeting creators, talking to creators, and I'm like, God, I want to do this again. And so I just started writing scripts and coming up with story ideas, and then began self-publishing with Christopher Alvarez and Hannah Moore with Ghost Thunder. I kind of wrote the first standalone story, Last Supper, that I was like, man, I think this is good enough to put it into like print. And I had some friends like Tim Daniel, who's my writing partner now, with my upcoming stuff. I had him read the script, and I'm like, is this any good? I don't know if this is any good. And got some pretty positive feedback from him and Cena, and then like just self-funded that first comic and started going to conventions and having people buy your comic, and then I had people go off and read it in the corner and come back and tell me how much they liked it. I've never done drugs. There's no better drug than that I could imagine. And talk about getting hooked on wanting to do more of that. That was like, yeah, if you can write something that can touch somebody and affect them emotionally, that's pretty awesome. So from there, I was hooked.
Pretty incredible. And Last Supper, although we have some of your small press stuff on the shelf, if anybody wants some, let me know. I'll point you in the right direction. Last Supper, you don't have any in print anymore, do you?
Not in single issues. It's the first chapter of the standalone, the volume that you have there, Wild Uncertain.
Perfect. Okay, so it's still in print, just not by itself. Because I remember the single issue when we first met.
Yeah, I actually sold out of 2 printings of that, and the printings weren't massive, but they're like 100 comics each. So I sold out of those, and it's just not financially viable to print single comics in the small quantities. The comic costs probably $3.75 per to print, and I'm selling it for $5. So not a lot of margin for any profit. To like
time you put in there, the time and the effort.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool when I you hold that first comic in your hand, you sell that first comic. But when you're trying to like offset the cost of conventions and travel and food and hotels, the larger volumes are definitely better bang for your buck. So that's why I put all 4 chapters. That used to be 4 floppies. I put all 4 chapters into one volume, and that is a better print to sell ratio.
No, that's fair, because we've talked about this on here many times with people. I don't think people quite understand the amount of time it takes for a small press creator like yourself to get this together, to get it done, to put the teams together. And then again, the cost, because like you said, if you're paying $3.75 for a book, it's $5 a book. You factor in every single piece of cost that goes with that.
Yeah,
And
I still haven't made, probably not even with the money I've made from Resonant, I still probably haven't made my money back on self-funding 4 issues of comics, because I'm paying the artist, I'm paying the letter, I'm paying to have it printed, and so I'm losing. I think I did the calculations for Last Supper when I did that first comic. I think I lost $12 every time someone bought one of the first set I printed out. I'm like, I am actually giving you $12 to read this.
But that goes back to you've never done drugs, but you were paying for that feeling.
I was paying for it, yeah. And and like Cena gave me this advice. You're not gonna make money on that, but that's your calling card, right? That's your business card. You're not gonna print out a business card that says, David Andry, writer, hire me. You're gonna hand someone a comic that you finished, that it has a beginning, middle, and end. They can sit down and read, and they can see what type of writer you are. And the fact that you want this bad enough that you won't have any other hobbies and you won't spend your money on anything else, I think lets people know that you're pretty darn serious about it.
I actually like that advice, because I've talked to people who get a little discouraged when they'll ask me some advice, and I'll go over some of the things they're going to have to factor in, and the fact that you're not going to just get image isn't just going to be like, oh my God, you're amazing, come to me. That is a really good thing that I'll tell them, because finish it. If you are passionate about it, if you love this industry, finish it for yourself and use it as a place to launch yourself.
Yeah, I looked at it as school, right? I paid a lot of money to get my degree. I paid a lot of money to, do all that stuff. This was, making comics doesn't have a really good school, and this was me going to school, learning how to write a script that's clear for the artist, learning what it means to turn in a script that's easy for the letterer to put into the page. And then, all the other stuff that goes on behind the scenes with editing and redoing scripts, and you got to kind of do it to learn it. And so this was, I never really looked at it as something that I wanted to like cash in on my self-published stuff. It was just, if I can make enough money that I'm not sinking myself, and I can do conventions, and I can make some contacts, and I can prove to editors and publishers out there that I'm serious and I can do this, and I can do it not just once, I can do it again and again and again, then it was worth it for me,
Well, and it obviously paid off. You did the legwork, you did the cons, you did the small press, and ultimately got picked up with Vault for Resonant. Now, how did that come about?
That goes back again to my connections volunteering at Skybound. Tim Daniel was there that first year, and he helped out at the booth, and we kind of connected pretty immediately, and kind of he's from the Bay Area, and he was living in Montana. He's still living in Montana, but he was a Bay Area guy, so we had that kind of connection. And we both were, Tim was doing logos and designing T-shirts and all that stuff, and he wanted to be a writer. And later we find out that he can do things like The Plot and and Fissure and all these other great books. And so we were
doing more behind the scenes than just the writing too. He
designed,
like a jack of all trades.
Yeah, he almost, they have a little help now, I think, but pretty much the first 3 years of Vault, any book that you held in your hand, he designed the logo, the cover, the layout. He put it into,
incredible.
Yeah, he made it ready to print, put it in the right formats, and helped with art design on the covers. And just his fingerprints are everywhere, all over that. So we kind of had this mutual, like, hey, we want to hustle and do this thing. And so he, started working. He started with Vault right when Vault started because they were all in Montana together, and they met. He met Adrian at a convention up in Montana and said, "Hey, we're going to start this company," and he's like, "Hey, I want to do stuff." So they like got together, and then I'm telling him, he's seeing me put out book after book, and I had started to put together some pitches that I wanted to start sending out. After I'd done a couple of my self-published things, I'm like, okay, I think I have the confidence to do this now. I think I can say that I can finish something, and I have some proof that I've done it. So he probably annoyed Adrian enough that Adrian agreed to meet with me. I don't know if there was money exchanged. I don't know what he did.
You don't need to know any of the details.
I don't need to know any. All I know is Adrian, myself, and David Boer, who is another. He writes Canto and has done some work with Vault in the past too. We went to dinner together, and Adrian said, "Okay, what you got?" And after a beer, I pitched him two things. And the second thing I pitched him was Resonant. And within about 30 seconds, I could see that he was into it. And here's a little tip for pitching. If they start mentioning, could this happen? And maybe this happens, you say, one, that means they're into it. And two, that means you start saying yes to whatever they say. Even if you have no intention of putting that in the book.
you keep them hooked. You keep them.
Yeah, sure. That's definitely a possibility. Okay.
That's awesome. So you got the dinner. You got the
So I actually got to pitch in person, which is one, I think, super intimidating, but two, way better. Like pitching on a piece of paper for me is really hard, but pitching in person, I liked a lot more. So yeah, luckily I got that, and then we kind of just slowly got into talks, and 2 years later, Resonant comes out. So it's not a fast process.
No. I mean, it never is in these kind of things, but it hit the stands. It did well for Vault. I know that. You've got 2 trades already, or second one's coming. When's it coming?
Second one's coming. I think at the end of November, beginning of December. I'm not sure what the official date is on that, but I think by December 1st it should be in shops.
Well, we will have plenty. Anyone who's not in the Sacramento area, or even if you are and you go to a different shop, talk to your shop, let them know you want volume 2. That way they can place their final order cutoffs to make sure you have a copy, and to increase the numbers on the on Resonant volume 2, please. What's interesting, and I'll have you give them a quick rundown here, but you were just speaking of Vault and them starting and him being there. I remember when they first came out, because we order a lot of independents. So I would order Vault, and it was a very small, tiny company. And I remember when you were first in the talks with them, you would do something. You'd go around the store and you'd be like, you'd have your phone and you'd be like, it's a Vault sighting. And you'd take a picture. You'd be like, okay, there's a Vault comic on the shelf. Now you can't get Vault comics on the shelf because they're everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. That's beautiful. That's really hard to do for a small independent company.
I mean, really hard in a short period of time. Really, it's only been like 4 years, and they've really got a good foothold now and have built a good rep. I think it speaks to Adrian's eye for story, and they have a very kind of set idea of what a Vault title is, and they'll take a pitch from a high level important writer and say, well, that's not a Vault pitch, that's not a Vault book, but what else do you have? So they're not gonna do just anything. They have a very specific idea of what they want their books to be, and so it's I think because of that identity and the quality of not just how the books look, they tend to get a good looking product out there. But the diversity and quality of the stories, I think, really help.
And they do. They've got some horror stuff. They've got some fantasy, some science fiction. And you hit. I don't know what inside information you had, sir, but this book hit at the right time for my customers, because when it came out and the trade's coming and Walking Dead's ending, I'm like, hey guys, we've got something here that'll scratch the itch. So why don't you tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, people have described it as a survival horror, and I think of it as like a post-apocalyptic kind of family drama survival horror. It's about a single father. He's got three kids, and we live in this post-apocalyptic world, and he has to go out and find medicine for his chronically ill youngest son, and he can't wait any longer. He has to go right now. And in this world, for the last decade, has been kind of ravaged by these waves of energy that come and force people to follow their deepest, darkest impulses. So, like those intrusive thoughts that you have, and it kind of activates that part of your brain, and people go nuts for a short period of time when these waves hit. And there's no real warning for these waves other than the chirping of cicadas, and the cicadas get super loud right before the waves hit, just kind of like sometimes dogs can predict earthquakes, and or crickets respond to how hot it is. The faster a crickets, the hotter it is outside. So this kind of external force causes these insects to react. So people kind of carry them around as early warning devices, and then will tie themselves up or bind themselves, or try to keep themselves from hurting themselves or others, because it's a lot of these intrusive thoughts are a lot of self-harm. And our main character Paxton is able to go into kind of a meditative Zen state and can ride out the waves without having to bind himself. So it puts him in he's got a slight advantage in this world.
See, now that's interesting that you said our main character, because I found the main character to be the daughter.
Yes. Yeah, she was not supposed to be the main character, but she kind of forced me to write her, and I didn't really have any control over it. I was talking to Ronnie earlier before we came on live, and that kind of just took over. And she wanted to be, she was just implacable, and I wanted her, and that was kind of the reason that she has a disability, is to very quickly show the reader that nothing's going to stop her and nothing's going to slow her down. Like, she can overcome anything. And so she could even overcome the writer, me, trying not to make her the main character. So yeah, she just really became like my favorite, and really had such a strong presence, and she knew exactly who she was, and wrote herself. I can't take a lot of credit for her, because she did most of it herself.
That's great. And she was, watching her go through this, especially introducing her in the beginning, you could tell she was a strong young girl. But again, she was living in this horrible world with a disability that could be very detrimental to her survival or her family's survival. And then to watch, and I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, but to watch the things that happen over the 10 issues.
Yeah.
For me, she definitely was the one.
Yeah. She, for sure. And, and it's kind of like, I still think about Resonant a lot. And I think about, like, because there was a lot in my head that went into writing these characters like they were. And Paxton, to me, was always a little bit flawed, much more so than the kids were, because he's kind of aware of all the mistakes he's made his whole life. And he kind of remembers the world before the waves hit. And these kids just have grown up in a world as it is. And so these things, that they're not missing something, and they're not trying to get back to something how it was before. And I think for someone who was alive before the waves and aware of the world before the waves, it's always going to feel like something's missing out of your life. And you kind of always wish things could go back to the way they were before the apocalypse. And these kids this is just the world that they know. And so they were always stronger than the father. And it was always a harder journey for the father to get back than it was for them to survive, to me, in my head, because they just, this is just their world, and everything's hard all the time, and they have to overcome it all the time.
That actually makes perfect sense when you lay it out like that. Because yeah, this is just the world they know. They're doing
Yeah.
whatever it takes to survive.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk a second about this artist who is fantastic. I don't want to show any pages that reveal anything or that are too horrific. But
So
let's show this is a nice one.
First arc? Yes. So that's Alejandro Aragon.
Yeah, blow this up, Ronnie.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it. It's beautiful. I love.
Now you picked a perfect. Yeah, you picked the perfect page, Ben, because if you look at the sky, right on that bottom of that page, if you look at where the lines are, there are no lines. So Jason Wordie, the colorist, put all that sky in himself.
Oh.
And and really the artists both. So we had Alejandro for the first 5 issues, and then Skylar Patridge took over at issue 6 and went through issue 10. And Jason kind of acted as the bridge between those. And most people didn't notice a major change in the art style. And that's really a benefit to Skylar modifying her style. So it was a fairly seamless transition. And then also Jason keeping that really kind of watercolor painted style of coloring that you see that just makes things just absolutely. I mean, I started writing more and more scenes where I'm like, and you can see a bunch of the sky here, just so Jason would continue to work and put stuff in, because his watercolor type coloring in this book is I'm going to argue is some of the best coloring in comic books ever. And I think is really because it's so beautiful, but actually so powerful when the waves hit and everything, the mood completely changes. The fact that the book at all can build this kind of tension that you need in a horror book where you don't have any sound effects and you don't have any music cues telling you something scary is happening. Jason took over all of that and really added that into the book. So if you spend the money and just look at the colors, you are getting your money's worth. I guarantee it.
Now that you're bringing it to my attention, I'm not going to show these pages because it reveals some stuff, but there's a scene where they're in the rain.
Yes.
There's a lot of action happening.
Yes.
And now I'm looking at the white. I never would have noticed that some of these scenes have blank backgrounds except for what the colorist did, because and it feels completed.
Yes.
That's pretty incredible. That's a good
Jason and I've posted this a bunch of times on Twitter. Hashtag Jason Wordie Eisner 2020, 2021, 2022. Jason Wordie had deserved an Eisner for this book from the first page he did. I mean, absolutely stands out there with the best coloring in any comic that I will say has ever been done. And so, that's my 2 cents. Look at the book, look at the coloring, look at where the lines are, look at where the colors are. And then Skylar, in the last 5 issues, she brings an emotional character acting element that Ollie didn't really have in the first arc. Ollie brings a lot of energy and movement and really chaoticness, and really captured like the action of the waves and these fight scenes and the stuff that's happening. And Skylar kind of carried that through, and then added a lot of character acting, and I'm really super proud of the team on this book. My writing aside, again, it's worth the price just to look at the art and the colors and the lettering from Darren Bennett and the And World design teams. They again, in a horror book that's based on sound, it's really hard to make sound happen in a comic book, and they kind of made a book that you can feel and hear, and I think as a first time published writer, I couldn't have gotten luckier with the team that Vault put together for me. I mean, I'm just like, it could have been a garbage script and they still would have made it look really good. And hopefully the story holds up its end of the bargain.
Yeah, I was about to say, you told everyone to pick it up, look at the colors, look at the pictures, but you might as well read it.
Might as well. You got it there. Might as well read it. You might like it. Everybody likes Beck. Yeah, everybody likes Beck. She's worth the price of admission.
There we go. And you just wrapped up the final issues.
Early to see, yeah.
And so, of course, and so the trade's coming now. I can't ruin anything for people, but you've wrapped it up. But you might not necessarily be done with this forever.
You know, I don't like to. I mean, I don't like to say forever. You know, I do have maybe more issues that I've written. If we ever want to return to this world, I would not say no to writing more Resonant and letting people see what happens to these characters further down the line, or visiting new characters or different things. So yeah, I mean, I'm always happy. I tend not to, you know, to look back and think about what could be. I'm focused on kind of next project moving forward. Let's do the next one. Let's do the next one.
Well, when I was talking to you prior to this, it's wrapping up. You're done.
Yeah.
You were immediately on to.
I've been done. Yeah, I am very far ahead. I like to be far ahead because of, you know, I work a full-time job and everything. I can't really let things sit to a deadline. I need to be done like ASAP. And also the style of writing that I do, I don't do a lot of outlining. I need to write it to know what happens. So I was done writing Resonant before issue 6 had started. I was done writing Resonant after issue 5 was finished. I finished, you know, the next 10 issues of what was only 5 issues to be written, to be produced. You know, I was done with that far in advance, and had already moved on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I think I had moved on to 4 different projects by the time issue 6 of Resonant came out. So
now, speaking of those future projects, is there anything we can talk about?
We can talk about End After End coming out through Vault Comics. Yeah, that one's been announced and it'll be out. It'll be out January 12th. So it'll be one of the first comics of 2022. Sweet. It'll be 10 issues, and myself and Tim Daniel co-writing. So we've started a writing partnership a little bit over a year ago. And that, if you thought I worked on a lot of projects before, put 2 heads together and basically you double the amount of projects you can work on. So yeah, End After End, and an artist named Sunando, who has a Comixology original coming out pretty soon, called Memoria. He's the artist on that.
How do you spell his name?
Sunando, Sunando, I think.
Okay. Well, that way I can look it up.
Yeah, and he's got a Comixology exclusive original coming out with Kurt Pierce, called Memoria, I think, and that should be out pretty soon or already out. It's going to come out. You know, they put their trades out on Dark Horse puts their trades out, so there'll be a trade on the shelves with that too. And he's doing the art, and Kurt Michael Russell is doing the coloring, and Jim Campbell is doing the letters, and we'll have Liana Congas doing the alternative covers. So we'll have 2 covers a month. Yeah, her covers, and we've already kind of put out the first ones. If you follow any of us on Twitter or Instagram, you've seen them. We've already put out the first 2 covers, both from Sunando and Liana, and they're amazing. And Tim, you know, is really hands on with that stuff too. I just say that looks good to me. You know, I don't really butt in too much with the cover ideas, and let the artistic geniuses do that, and I'll just stick my head down and keep writing.
Perfect.
Yeah. So it's a fantasy. And I call it a low fantasy because it's not a lot of magic rules and spells and stuff. It is a wartime fantasy told from the view of a grunt in the trenches. So at the moment of your death here on Earth, you are instantly transported to this world where you're conscripted into the forces of good versus evil. And you're just basically like, if you teleported in to the Battle of Normandy as they're storming the beach, that's your introduction. There's no training camp. There's no basic training. There's like, here's a sword, here's a shield, fight those dudes. And we follow our main character Walt as he tries to survive this new world after his death.
Is he from our modern day world?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's nice, because then we have a perspective. We can really feel it.
Yeah. And so, Walt will find himself kind of hooked up in this quest where he's really trying to make something of himself. And we're going to get into his backstory, and it's really, I don't know, we're putting a lot into it. There's some covers.
Yeah, and you've already got it's going to be 10 issues, so that's
10 issues. Yeah. And honestly, I want people to read this so bad, and I want people to stick with it. I know so many of us buy the first issue and then say, "Oh, I'll wait for the trade." But like, issue 5 is like was my personal baby, and I'm like, I know exactly what I want issue 5 to be. And Tim really helped me with that and let me run away with that a little bit. And then came in and made it perfect afterwards. And I really love issue 5, and issue 7 and 8 are 2 of my favorite issues. And this was one of the only stories ever that I knew the ending immediately. Immediately, I knew the ending scene, exactly how I wanted to play out emotionally. And I knew every part of that. And me and Tim, we've told this story before, when we decided to work together, we kind of set an appointment. We're like, okay, we're going to talk this Saturday, and we're chat. And it's like, okay, man, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really have any ideas that I'm working on right now. And I'm like, I got this one thing. I just have it's not even an idea. It's a kernel of an idea. And Tim's like, oh, okay, as long as it's not fantasy. And I said, well, it's fantasy.
And that's the one that ends up being the next volume.
Yeah, yeah. And so, like I said, it's just like at the moment of your death, you show up in this world, and you're immediately in the middle of this massive battle that's been going, in this war that's been going on for thousands of years. And it's not like, where you see in movies and maybe other books, this person is totally inept and then picks up a sword and has a training montage and now is a badass fighter and beats people who have been fighting their whole life. No, this guy just kind of, it's like if I showed up there and someone gave me a sword, yeah, I know where the pointy end is, but I don't really know how to use it or do anything with it, And so we wanted to keep that level. And so once we got into that, and Tim's like, okay, this isn't fantasy like I think it's fantasy. That first day we talked, we knew kind of the themes we wanted to go with, the feeling that we wanted to have with this book. And I'm pretty sure we came up with the ending right there. And that has never happened to me before. So I'm super duper excited about this book. And I really hope people grab onto it and get into it. And, it's not zombies or vampires, but I promise it's cool.
And it's the beginning of 2022, so it'll be a brand new year.
Yep.
Speaking of, you mentioned this. You mentioned you really want people to pick it up and read the issues. Do you have anything you can tell them about why it's important for people to support the issues?
Well, I mean, that kind of dictates not just, if you like the creative team, it not only dictates what this book is going to do, but if you're going to get the next book. If Resonant came out and it was a flop, you wouldn't be talking to me anymore because there would be nobody, willing to give me a second shot. So those single issue sales really are important. And, the trade will live forever. But getting people to talk about the single issues and having that monthly hit of that comic, I love comic book shops, and I want to support comic book shops, and I want comic book shops to stick around. I don't want to read my books digitally, and as much as I do like trades, I don't want shops to go around. So if you find a book, that you like, support it, and if you find a team that you like, support them, because that'll get them their next book.
Yeah, and it's super important to the publisher too, because although I'm not discouraging you from buying trades at all. In fact, buy a trade for your friend who hasn't read it. But for the company, they out the gate, issue 1, 2, 3, they're deciding what to do and whether there's going to be a 6.
Yeah,
they're looking at it right there, and they have on the moment numbers.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, because unfortunately, we know there's attrition. Not everybody who reads everything's going to like everything. So that issue 2 can go down like 70%. And I'm sure Ben, how much you order of issue 1 compared to issue 2. And if you can keep, that's why you get things like small companies like Vault can't put out books that lose a lot of money. As much as they may love the title and how much the creators may want it to go forward. I know plenty of creators who have done books for Vault who wanted their titles to go longer, that it just didn't, because the single issue sales. Now, trades may make up for that and they may swing back around, but it typically, if the sales fall off, then you're only going to get so many of that story. If Resonant 10 sold what Resonant 1 did, I guarantee you'd be reading Resonant 11, Resonant 12, Resonant 13 right now. And it doesn't really matter what the trade does at this point, because it's really hard to go back around and get people excited for a new release of issue 11. It doesn't really happen that much.
Plus, and you've already moved on.
Yeah, it's always onto and the creative team has moved on. The company has moved on, and a lot of times the readers have moved on. And while they would love more of it, they may not support it right off the bat, because they'll just wait for the trade. And we're really packing. I think over half of these issues, and I'm going to say almost all of the issues of End After End are longer than 22 pages. So each single issue is extra sized. So we're really. Neat. Yeah, we just kind of decided we're just gonna write it, and if we need extra pages, we're gonna throw extra pages in there. And Vault is totally supportive with that. So we're getting some extra big size, hefty size to fit all this action and all the stuff that we're putting in here. Yeah, we wrote the heck out of this thing, and Sonando is bringing. It's really interesting because the artist has worked a lot in crime and noir, and kind of has this grittier style that you don't associate with fantasy, and it goes perfectly with the type of story we're writing. And so I think it's going to be pretty unexpected. People are going to see this and not have seen fantasy that looks like this before.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so I'm really excited.
That's good. Now, again, if you are not in the Sacramento area, or I'm sorry, if you're not coming to Empires Comics, well, that's rude.
It's not me. It's not me, Ben.
It's me. I'm sorry. If you're here, let me know. But if you're not, let your retailer know. It's very important that they know what you want, because what we're doing is every month when I'm ordering, I'm ultimately making a guess. Who do I know in the store that wants it? How many people come in to buy Independence? Yada yada yada. But if you tell them you want it, not only will they make sure they have the copy for you, but that will show them that people are interested, which means maybe I should order an extra 5.
Yep. And that's really super important for those initial, get that issue 1, get that issue 2, make sure you have that on your pull list. Because exactly like Ben said, for busy shops, for shops that have to look over 300 titles a month coming out, they're not going to go, gosh, let me look what this one is like. Oh, let me read this sample that they sent me. They may just have 5 minutes in between customers to put in their order. If 10 people put it in their pull box, they're going to order 20 for the shop for sure. So by you pre-ordering it, you're not just getting 1 extra copy. You're probably printing 2 or 3 extra copies along with what you did. And so again, that's another way to really just vote for your favorite creative teams. Put a little bit of love our way for the indies, and get those orders up, because that really can make or break a small publisher and a small title, that doesn't have, again, a massive creative team associated with it, or a major IP associated with it. This is, people always say they want something new. They don't want reboots. They don't want events. This is the way to do it. You support the indies, and you don't get as much of that stuff.
And no, you're 100% correct, because again, I love my Peter Parker and my Bruce Wayne, but buying a new #1 at Marvel isn't necessarily getting something new. It's still another rehash of something old. Whereas this is putting your money where your mouth is and being like, yes, I want to allow people to try something and to explore the medium in ways that hasn't been done with the big companies.
Yeah. I mean, you want bang for, really help out a creator. Buying Hickman's next book, as much as I will do that too, does not make a difference to Hickman. But you buying my book makes a massive difference to me.
and that's actually a very good point. And it honestly doesn't make a difference to me either, because if 10 people come and add Hickman's new book to their list, I'm still going to order a huge number. But if 3 people come and add it to a smaller press book, that really just tells me, oh, wait a minute, I really need to take this into consideration.
Yeah. And it's, a lot of times it's word of mouth that can make or break a little book. That we had a lot of people telling other people about Resonant, and so shop owners and tell your friends and say, this book looks really cool, you should check it out. If you read the first issue, you're like, man, I like this. Tell people that. Tell people about the books. It's pretty easy to dunk on stuff that you hate, but tell people they should really pick this up and they should add it to their pull list, and their shop should order more of it. If you get enough voices saying that, it can really go a long way with the smaller publishers.
Yes, and there's a little behind the scenes for everybody. Yes. So you understand why it's important. Before we go, I did think it was funny when you were in here selling. You had sold one young lady on it, and she brought it to the counter, and she goes, "Okay, Ben, add it to my saver." And then she turned around and she said, "But I better like this." I remember that, and just so you know, she followed through on all 10. So you're
all right. You know what? And I think the days of working booths at cons have made me. I'm not afraid to sell to each individual person. So I will hand sell this book to you. I will talk it up. If you want to ask me a question on Twitter about it, feel free. I'm very easily accessible, and I will sell you this book. You buy this book. You tell me you like it, and I'll love you forever.
Nice. Well, there you guys can find them right there. Of course, we've got it on the screen. Go look it up. Check out Resonant. Flip through it while you're here. Take a peek. I've got them on the shelf. And then volume 2 will be coming. I know some of you have already put in orders, and we've got them coming. But anybody else who read number 1 who is interested, please let me know so I can increase the orders by a little bit more. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. It's always a pleasure.
Ben.
I am looking forward to seeing this new book and seeing the alternate covers as well, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, January. Put in your orders now. Final order cutoff will be in a couple of weeks, or a couple. I think November, sometime. So we've got a month to get your orders in. Get your orders in now, and really, that first printing is based off of how many people order. So we want to really get those numbers up. So there's a lot of it floating around there for people to buy. So order now. Order often.
Well, order often. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. You have a great evening, and then I will see all of you in the shop.